When the fires of life intensify and pressure mounts from all directions, Aries does not falter. Governed by Mars, the god of war, Aries is the celestial warrior forged in the crucible of challenge. In the cosmic battlefield of life, be it the cutthroat corporate arena, the heavy demands of family, or the invisible chains of social expectation, Aries rises not only to meet the moment, but to conquer it with blazing determination. Aries under pressure is not a retreating flame, but a wildfire. The more the tension tightens, the more this sign ignites with a relentless drive. The ram thrives in the heat of urgency, where others may freeze or second-guess. Challenges and deadlines are not threats to Aries, they are summons to action. When time is short and expectations are high, Aries' instinctual response is to charge forward. No hesitation, no deliberation, only pure, raw motion. This fire sign doesn't negotiate with obstacles, it demolishes them. When someone dares to challenge Aries, when someone questions their ability, ambition, or authority, it doesn't instill doubt. It awakens a primal force. Aries channels pressure into pure kinetic energy, letting their courage blaze a trail through the storm. Every doubt becomes fuel, every criticism a spark that only intensifies their fire. Their mind races, their pulse accelerates, and they lock eyes with the impossible and say, "Watch me." In the workplace, Aries is the one who steps in when the project is falling apart, when others have lost their nerve. They are not intimidated by chaos, they command it. Aries under professional pressure is decisive, bold, and action-oriented. They cut through indecision like a sword through fog, taking on leadership not because they crave the spotlight, but because they cannot stand still while others hesitate. They are doers in a world of thinkers. If there is a mountain to climb, Aries doesn't plan. They leap, claw, and scramble until the summit is theirs. Socially, Aries often feels the weight of expectation, being the initiator, the brave one, the example. And yet, rather than crumbling beneath the weight of perception, Aries lets it sharpen them. Their authenticity is their shield. They don't conform to please, they break molds to inspire. The pressure to fit in becomes a reason to stand out, and their raw, unfiltered energy draws others in like moths to flame. Within the family, Aries may wrestle with the pressure to fulfill roles, to be the dependable protector, or the rebel who must balance passion with duty. But even here, under emotional demand, Aries channels their inner fire. They defend those they love with ferocity. They push themselves beyond exhaustion to provide, to prove, to persevere. And when misunderstandings or conflict arise, Aries confronts them head-on. There is no evasion in the heart of the ram, only the courage to face what others fear. Aries doesn't seek pressure, but when it comes, they greet it like an old rival, grinning with anticipation. For it is in these crucibles of hardship that Aries is reborn again and again, each time fiercer, wiser, and more unstoppable. They may stumble from overexertion. They may clash with those who can't keep pace, but they never stay down for long. Resilience is in their bones. Victory is in their blood. When the world demands too much, when expectations loom and doubts whisper, Aries becomes the hero of their own myth. They are not the ones who complain about the weight, they are the ones who lift it. They are the spark in darkness, the storm before calm, the force that reminds the world that fear has no power when met with unbreakable will. Aries under pressure doesn't break. They burn brighter, and from that blaze they emerge victorious, not because it was easy, but because they were forged for exactly this. When pressure takes on more subtle, psychological forms, when it is not externalized in visible obstacles but manifests as inner turmoil, invisible expectations, or relentless self-criticism, Aries must battle a different kind of opponent. This is the pressure that seeps in through silence, that comes not with noise and deadlines but with the haunting whisper of inadequacy or the fear of not moving fast enough. And even in these unseen wars, Aries finds their courage. Ruled by Mars, Aries is often associated with brute force and action, but beneath that surface lies an often overlooked dimension. The mental tenacity to keep going when the fire inside flickers, when motivation wanes, and when no one is cheering. This is where Aries shows the true strength of their soul. In isolation, they do not surrender to despair. Instead, they awaken a deeper sense of identity. Aries may burn out from time to time, but from their own ashes they rise, not as something different, but more completely themselves. In moments when they are misunderstood, underestimated, or even betrayed, Aries confronts not just the world, but their own fears and limitations, forging resilience like tempered steel. There is a sacred restlessness in Aries that thrives even under internal pressure. They are born to initiate, to act, and to chase. Yet, when forced into stillness, whether by societal barriers, familial expectation, or systemic constraint, Aries doesn't simply wait. They simmer. They plot their return with intensity. Patience may not be their natural ally, but perseverance is. They do not abandon their mission simply because it is paused. Instead, they evolve, adapt, and when the time comes, they strike with precision. Their spontaneity is matched by a capacity to bounce back from failure without losing momentum or hope. Another often unspoken realm where Aries shines under pressure is in emotional resilience. Aries may be fiery and impulsive, but they love with the same intensity they fight. When the people they care about are in distress, Aries feels a deep, primal responsibility to protect, to fix, to act. And yet, they are frequently misunderstood in this domain because their approach to emotional hardship is through strength and forward movement, not passivity. They do not sit in pain. They rise with it. Even when their own hearts are breaking, they will stand tall for others, carrying burdens not to earn recognition but because they cannot bear to see others suffer while they have the power to act. Social pressure attempts to shape Aries, to soften their edges, to slow their fire. But Aries does not compromise the truth of who they are. Conformity is a language they do not speak. In a world that often rewards docility, Aries is the rebel whose rebellion is not loudness for its own sake, but a declaration of authenticity. They may pay the price for their directness and their refusal to blend in, but they do so with honor. Their presence is a challenge to systems that reward complacency, and even if they stand alone, they would rather walk alone in truth than march with the crowd in silence. Under pressure, Aries does not become someone else, they become more of who they are. This sign does not dissolve into stress. It crystallizes into purpose. The higher the stakes, the more clearly they hear their inner calling. They are born leaders not simply because they can command, but because they are willing to be the first to leap when no path is certain. And in doing so, they carve a way for others to follow. Even in the most trying of times, when the storm is relentless and there is no guarantee of success, Aries moves. They do not need the promise of reward to give their all. They do it because that is what they are made for. In every myth, there is a moment when the hero is tested beyond their strength, when the darkness seems to engulf everything. Aries meets that moment not with despair, but with defiance. Their flame might flicker, but it never dies. Because Aries is not just the sign of beginnings. It is the eternal spark that says, even now, especially now, I will rise. This is the heartbeat of the warrior soul. This is the anthem of the ram beneath pressure. Not just to survive the fire, but to become it. There is a sacred, almost mythic solitude that surrounds Aries under pressure, one that is often misunderstood. While they are seen as fierce initiators and unrelenting leaders, the truth is that much of their strength is born in silence. When no one is watching, when the world seems indifferent, when the burden is theirs alone to carry. In those moments, Aries draws from a deeper well, one not sourced by external applause but by an inner oath never to surrender. This vow is ancient, encoded in their very essence by Mars, the celestial general, who taught them not only to advance but to endure, not only to fight but to believe. Aries under sustained pressure does not crack because their identity is forged not in ease, but in resistance. The more the universe pushes against them, the more they push back, not from arrogance but from purpose. Their soul thrives on proving that limits are only illusions waiting to be shattered. And even when life delivers defeat, Aries doesn't crumble. They transform it into firewood, igniting a blaze that consumes discouragement and turns it into drive. What some call failure, Aries sees as fuel. What others call adversity, Aries calls awakening. The spiritual dimension of Aries becomes visible when they face not the external world, but the inner shadows, doubt, fear of inadequacy, wounds from betrayal or disappointment. These are not enemies that can be defeated with action alone. They require inner battlefields. And Aries, though often associated with external bravery, possesses a heart capable of deep introspection and courageous healing. When pressured by unresolved pasts or emotional blockages, Aries does not flee. Eventually, even if it takes time, they confront the wound directly. They rip off the mask and dare to meet the truth. And through that confrontation, they are reborn, not just stronger but more whole. In the collective energetic field, Aries carries the vibration of ignition. They are the spark before movement, the cry before charge, the hand that opens the locked door of action. Under societal or generational pressure to conform, to dull their instincts, to compromise their passion in exchange for peace, Aries becomes the necessary disruptor. They are not driven by destruction, but by the desire to create space for something more authentic to rise. Their rebellion is divine. In a world sedated by comfort and restraint, Aries reminds us all that progress begins with courage, and courage is rarely quiet or tidy. There are moments when Aries, under immense stress, may appear reckless or impulsive, but beneath that immediacy lies a cosmic impulse to liberate energy that has been caged for too long. Their sudden decisions are often the result of intolerable stagnation. When pressure tries to confine them into roles or expectations that contradict their inner truth, Aries erupts, not to hurt, but to breathe. Freedom is not a luxury for Aries, it is oxygen. Their fierce independence is not just a personality trait, but a sacred necessity. When their personal truth is threatened, Aries will burn bridges, climb walls, or carve new paths through the wilderness, all in the name of integrity. In times of global crisis or collective tension, Aries' energy becomes essential. This is the sign that reminds humanity how to act when fear paralyzes, how to step forward when all others hesitate. They are the frontline spirits, the ones who say, "I'll go first." They absorb the brunt of resistance so others can find courage in their wake. This archetype doesn't wait for safety, it defines it. In every revolution, in every heroic tale, in every breakthrough moment, there is a flash of Aries' energy leading the charge. Even when exhausted, even when carrying emotional scars, Aries continues to rise. Their leadership is not always graceful, but it is always real. The physical body of Aries responds to pressure through movement. When pinned down, they instinctively seek motion, to run, to act, to create kinetic clarity. That is how they process energy, through decisive physical and mental engagement. Stagnation is their enemy, and so, under prolonged pressure, Aries finds release through creativity, through action, through motion that becomes mantra. Their movement becomes their meditation, their fight becomes their dance, their willpower becomes their prayer. What is often forgotten is that Aries also loves deeply. Their fiery heart, once committed, is fiercely loyal. When pressure involves protecting those they love, Aries ascends to an even higher octave of courage. They will take on burdens far greater than themselves if it means shielding someone they care for. This selflessness, cloaked in passion, is one of Aries' most heroic traits. And though they may not always express affection in conventional ways, their devotion under pressure is unshakable. They are protectors in a world that often forgets how to defend what truly matters. Ultimately, Aries is the cosmic dawn, the moment of becoming. Under pressure, they do not fade. They rise with the sun, again and again, fueled by something ancient, something divine. Their existence is a reminder that to begin anew, one must dare to break from the past. That to lead, one must be willing to stand alone. That to win, one must first fight. And that true power is not measured by dominance, but by the ability to ignite hope in the hearts of others. In the infinite journey of the soul, Aries is the spark that says yes to life even when the odds say no. Under pressure, Aries does not yield. They blaze forward, bearing the torch for all who've forgotten their fire. When examining Aries under pressure from yet another lens, the karmic, evolutionary, and soul-based perspective, one encounters a profound truth. Aries is not only the first sign of the zodiac but the energetic prototype of divine will incarnated into matter. It is the moment the cosmos chose to act, to breathe, to dare. Therefore, when Aries faces pressure, they are not merely responding to external circumstances. They are reenacting the original myth of creation itself. Chaos sculpted into direction, energy molded into purpose. Pressure, for Aries, is sacred initiation. From a deeper astrological point of view, Aries is where the soul chooses to individuate. It is where spirit decides to claim identity, to say, I am, despite the void, despite the risk of separation, despite the terror of isolation. Thus, when life compresses Aries into corners, into impossible decisions, into arenas of solitude or sacrifice, they are reliving the sacred fire of emergence. Their instinct to move forward, even at great personal cost, is not immaturity, it is cosmic memory. They remember what it takes to be born, again and again. In mythological archetypes, Aries is the lone warrior, yes, but also the sacred challenger, the eternal gatekeeper of momentum. The zodiac begins with Aries for a reason, because nothing happens without that initial burst of raw force. In times of collective paralysis, it is Aries' energy that revives the body politic, the family dynamic, the personal vision. The pressure they face is not only for themselves. On a soul level, Aries often incarnates to stir the stagnant waters for others. They disrupt patterns, break ancestral chains, defy cultural slumber. And while this role often leaves them bruised, misunderstood, or exhausted, it also aligns them with divine will. They are the torchbearers, the ones who enter the dark cave not to dwell, but to drag the light in. There is also the sacred rage of Aries, a divine anger often repressed by modern conditioning. But under pressure, when injustice flares or when dignity is threatened, Aries channels this rage not destructively but redemptively. It is not violence, it is purification. It is the holy fire that says, enough. Aries does not tolerate abuse of power, especially under pressure. They rise as warriors for those who have no voice, no shield, no means of resistance. This protective fire is ancient, and it moves through Aries like ancestral thunder. It is instinct, yes, but it is also spiritual contract. Aries often doesn't know why they must speak up, move first, risk everything. They only know they must. That calling is written in the stars. Beneath the armor of Aries lies a heart more vulnerable than the world often recognizes. Pressure does not always harden them. In truth, it can open them wide and raw because they care far more deeply than they show. Their passion is not just drive. It is love expressed through motion. When someone they love is in pain, Aries doesn't freeze or philosophize. They act. They will go to war for a friend, climb emotional Everest for a partner, tear down walls for a child. Under emotional pressure, Aries becomes fierce in tenderness. They may not always use the right words, but their loyalty is felt in their actions. They show up, fight back, stand guard. They love not with sweet songs but with swords of presence. In astrological evolution, Aries also teaches the world how to fail. Yes, they are associated with victory, but they are also masters of falling and rising again and again. Under extreme pressure, Aries may make mistakes. Rash decisions, overextensions, moments of pride. But it is in their bounce back that their magic truly resides. They are not paralyzed by shame or parched by guilt. They learn by doing, and even in their falls, they rise quicker than most would dare to try again. Their failures become fuel. Their wounds become war paint. Their scars become symbols of survival. There is no experience Aries will not eventually turn into strength. No pressure that will not, in time, become momentum. Aries' relationship with time is also unique under pressure. While other signs may ruminate, strategize, or wait for perfect conditions, Aries understands the sacredness of the now. They are the embodiment of immediate response, not from impatience, but from soul alignment. They know that waiting too long dilutes destiny. So under pressure, when others deliberate, Aries acts. And through this action, they often unlock doors that would never have opened to passive energy. This trust in instinct is not recklessness, it is cosmic partnership. Mars, their ruler, lends them not only courage, but intuitive precision in the face of urgency. On the highest octave of their path, Aries doesn't only lead for glory. They lead to liberate. The pressure they withstand, be it personal, systemic, emotional, or spiritual, is not endured in vain. It is part of a greater architecture of transformation. Aries does not just fight to win. They fight to awaken, to shake the slumbering world and shout, "Life is movement. Choose it, chase it, burn for it." That is their gospel. That is their gift. In the end, the legacy of Aries under pressure is one of unapologetic authenticity. They show the world what it means to live in full flame, to be the match that ignites 1,000 lanterns. They do not dim themselves to fit into shadows. They expand until the shadows dissolve. And though their road is often steep, lonely, or misunderstood, Aries walks it with the knowledge that the fire within them is older than fear, stronger than doubt, and destined to light the way. There exists a celestial rhythm pulsing through Aries that transcends logic, strategy, and expectation. When pressure arises not just from external demands but from the weight of their own destiny, Aries becomes something more than a sign, more than an individual. They become a force of nature. This is not the fire that flickers or warms, but the wildfire that reshapes landscapes. The essence of Aries is not merely to endure pressure, but to convert it into transformation, to ignite momentum where stagnation reigns, and to birth clarity from chaos. While often described as the archetype of the warrior, Aries is also the guardian of sacred beginnings. In astrology, the first degree of Aries marks the vernal equinox, the spark of new life after darkness, the resurrection of vitality after winter's silence. This is no coincidence. Aries is not afraid of the void. In fact, they thrive where there is nothing, no plan, no guarantee, no path, because they are designed to create movement where none exists. Under immense pressure, especially when all previous methods have failed, Aries does not look backward. They blaze forward into uncertainty with divine audacity, trusting in their ability to figure it out mid-flight, to mold meaning mid-motion. Aries under pressure becomes the embodiment of raw courage. This is not the absence of fear but the willingness to walk through it, unarmored and lit from within. There are moments in life when the soul is called to leap before it is ready, to speak before the words are perfect, to defend what is right before consensus forms. This is where Aries is forged in fire. Their truth is not formed in deliberation, but in action. They do not wait for permission because their existence itself is permission. In times of great moral and emotional pressure, when silence is complicity and inaction is betrayal, Aries stands, even if they stand alone. What is rarely explored is the instinctual intelligence that Aries holds beneath their fire. Though often framed as impulsive or reactive, Aries actually carries an ancient inner knowing, passed down through the Mars lineage. This intelligence is primal but not primitive. It is the wisdom of the predator that knows when to pounce, the fighter that senses when to strike, the pioneer who feels where the trail begins even when there is no visible map. Under pressure, when overthinking becomes a trap and hesitation a wound, Aries accesses this somatic brilliance. Their body, heart, and spirit align with cosmic timing. In that alignment, miracles unfold. There is also a deeply mystical side to Aries often overlooked in favor of their kinetic traits. But in esoteric astrology, Aries rules the head, not just the physical brain, but the crown, the gateway to divine will. When pressure becomes unbearable, when the ego begins to fracture under the weight of expectation, Aries has the potential to channel not chaos but clarity. They do not collapse into fragmentation. They open into revelation. Like prophets of movement, they become vehicles for the pulse of universal evolution, hearing the call that others are too afraid to answer. This channeling is not passive, it is infused with fire. Aries burns through illusion, purifies hesitation, and declares truth through motion. Emotionally, Aries under pressure develops a rare form of emotional armor, not cold detachment, but sacred resilience. They may weep behind closed doors, scream into the silence, or retreat briefly to tend to wounds that no one sees. But they return, always. Their comeback is not just physical, it is spiritual. They understand that pressure reveals purpose. And in moments where the world asks them to shrink, Aries instead expands. They break molds, redefine roles, and redraw the lines others fear to cross. Their emotional courage is in their refusal to let fear dictate their destiny. Aries also teaches the world about the holiness of anger. While many fear this emotion or deem it unspiritual, Aries knows that righteous fury is a flame of justice. When pressure stems from injustice, betrayal, or repression, Aries does not hide their fire. They weaponize it into transformation. Their anger is sacred. It protects the vulnerable, calls out falsehood, and rips off the masks of deceit. It is not uncontrolled chaos, but the roar of the divine warrior refusing to bow to systems of control. In a world that numbs itself into submission, Aries shouts the truth that awakens sleeping hearts. The soul journey of Aries, especially under extreme pressure, is a rite of embodiment. They are here to teach the rest of the zodiac that the divine does not live only in stillness or silence, but also in action, in momentum, in the sacred messiness of trying and failing and rising again. Their fire is a living prayer, and under pressure, that prayer intensifies, burns brighter, and lights the way for others afraid to take their first step. Aries does not promise perfection, they promise movement. And in a universe that is always expanding, it is their fire that ensures nothing stays frozen for too long. Even in leadership, Aries redefines what it means to carry weight. They do not lead to control, but to liberate. When teams or families crumble under pressure, Aries steps forward, not to dominate, but to spark belief. Their confidence is contagious, their forward drive irresistible. They show others what is possible by doing what others won't. And while they often pay the price in solitude, they gain the sacred satisfaction of knowing they moved the needle, changed the course, carved the road. In the final analysis, Aries under pressure is not the sign of collapse, but the sign of combustion. Fuel turned to force, fear turned to fire. They remind us all that pressure is not punishment, but invitation. An invitation to rise, to remember, and to reclaim the part of us that is still wild, still willing, still hungry for life. Aries walks into the storm not to test their strength, but to become the storm itself. And in their wake, the world burns a little brighter, braver, and more alive. There is a primordial memory encoded in Aries that speaks not just to fire, but to the origin of movement itself. Beyond the battlefield and beyond the storm, Aries carries within their soul the divine archetype of the first heartbeat. This is not merely symbolic, it is cosmic function. Aries exists to start the motion that others are too hesitant to begin. In the face of pressure, they become not the reaction, but the very trigger of transformation. Their presence catalyzes the unfolding of fate in spaces where time once stood still. Astrologically, Aries belongs to the cardinal cross, those energies designed to initiate the seasons, to shift paradigms, to tilt the axis of the collective psyche. Under pressure, Aries becomes the embodiment of the great turning. They are the cosmic lever that breaks stagnation, the divine spark that breaks cycles not because they are rebellious, but because they are compelled by an inner knowing that life must evolve. Their impulse is not reckless instinct, it is evolutionary command. What the world often misinterprets about Aries is the sacred innocence that lives beneath their armor. Before the world taught them to protect themselves, before the disappointments hardened their edges, there was a childlike essence within them that simply believed in possibility. Under pressure, this inner child does not vanish, it rises. In moments of extreme adversity, Aries draws upon an unshakable trust in beginnings. Even after loss, betrayal, failure, or collapse, Aries believes, against all logic, that something new can be built. This belief is not naive. It is revolutionary. In a world that often romanticizes resignation, Aries dares to try again. There is an untamed honesty in Aries that pressure only amplifies. While others may conceal their truth to maintain peace or delay consequences, Aries speaks from the furnace of their convictions. When pressure demands silence, Aries roars. Their voice may tremble, but it never betrays their essence. This level of integrity is rare. It cuts through manipulation, cuts through confusion, and reawakens the fundamental right to authenticity. Aries does not speak to be liked, they speak to be real. And under pressure, that realness becomes a sword of light. In the deeper chambers of the zodiac's evolutionary purpose, Aries represents the birth of divine individuality. This does not mean selfishness, it means sovereignty. Aries under pressure is being asked by the universe to reassert their right to exist as they are without apology. In environments where conformity is expected, where family structures demand sacrifice of the self, where social pressures demand diplomacy at the cost of truth, Aries becomes the spiritual rebel. They may be exiled, misunderstood, criticized, but they will never betray their soul's frequency. This fierce loyalty to their own spirit is not pride, it is mission. The body of Aries responds to pressure with intensity, but also with alchemy. Mars-ruled energy is not passive, it demands release. When life becomes too heavy, Aries instinctively seeks outlets that transform density into movement. They run, fight, create, initiate, explode not to destroy, but to prevent implosion. And in this physical alchemy, they teach the world that energy must flow, that stagnation is poison, that suppressed fire becomes illness. Aries under pressure becomes the healer through kinetic truth. Another deeply sacred aspect of Aries under duress is their capacity for solitude. Though often portrayed as group leaders or competitive forces, the real Aries journey is deeply solitary. When the noise becomes too loud, when the guidance of others muddies their instinct, Aries retreats. Not to hide, but to reconnect. In the silence of isolation, they remember who they are. They sharpen their sword, fortify their heart, rebuild their faith in self without distraction. Solitude for Aries is not loneliness. It is a forge. It is where they become flame again. The esoteric rulership of Aries extends beyond Mars. It connects to Mercury in its highest vibration. This grants Aries not only action, but divine insight when their fire is channeled through clarity. Under pressure, if they can still the storm within just long enough, Aries accesses divine inspiration. The mind becomes quick, the vision sharp, the words potent. They don't just react, they reveal. Their insight is prophetic in those moments. They suddenly see the truth others have missed, act on it before it is safe to do so, and guide others through their conviction. There is a sacred grief Aries holds. One rarely spoken of, but always present. It is the grief of being first, the grief of carrying fire into cold worlds. They often face ridicule before they are honored, rejection before recognition. They pay the price of being ahead of their time. The pressure of being a pathfinder can feel unbearable, especially when they must continue without map or mentor. But even then, they rise. Even when the torch burns their own hand, they keep carrying it because they know the light is not just for them. It is for the ones still lost in the dark. The myth of Aries is not just about conquest. It is about becoming, about carving the soul into shape through friction. Pressure to Aries is divine friction. It polishes the raw edges, tests the strength of their convictions, and reveals the truth of their courage. Each trial is a sacred forge where their identity is strengthened, purified, and reborn. In those fires, they do not lose themselves, they remember. And in the grand epic of cosmic evolution, Aries does not merely survive pressure, they transmute it. They turn the crushing force of expectation into a call to rise. They turn the silence of isolation into the drumbeat of independence. They turn every shattered path into the start of a new one, blazing forward not because they have all the answers, but because they are willing to ask the universe, what if? In the end, Aries becomes more than a warrior, more than a flame. They become a living example that the soul is meant to be free, that beginnings are sacred, that courage is the highest form of love, and that even under the weight of the world, one can still run toward the horizon with a heart full of fire and the unstoppable will to rise. There is an eternal rhythm that pulses through Aries which cannot be silenced by pressure. It is the undying drumbeat of the heroic soul. This energy, born from the first celestial breath of the zodiac, does not retreat when the sky darkens or when the world trembles under the weight of expectation. Instead, it rises with unrelenting force, propelled not by external validation, but by an inner command etched in the stars since the dawn of cosmic time. Aries does not merely act. They initiate the very act of becoming. When pressure strikes, They become the flint that sets transformation ablaze. Beyond the external challenges that shape the Aries journey, beyond labor, conflict, and adversity, exists a deeper, more ancient crucible, the confrontation with the self. It is in this sacred fire that Aries truly burns. The trials they face under pressure are often not about others. They are internal odysseys designed to force them into the rawest versions of themselves. Stripped of approval, applause, or comfort, Aries finds truth in their own blood and bone. They confront their shadows not to be rid of them, but to learn their shape, to wield their darkness with honor. For Aries, under immense pressure, the battlefield becomes internal. Between fear and courage, impulse and wisdom, ego and essence. Their journey teaches that courage is not a fixed state. It is a muscle forged by resistance. The more they are challenged, the more resilient their spirit becomes. There is sacred geometry to this process. Pressure compresses, and in compression, diamonds are born. Aries becomes that gem, unrefined perhaps, but incandescent with purpose. Their light is not polished by others. It is self-created in the forge of experience. This is the holy fire of Aries, the light that does not dim when misunderstood, but glows brighter for being tested. What is often overlooked is Aries' relationship with destiny. While the world may perceive them as spontaneous or reactionary, their instincts are more than animal. They are cosmic alignments moving through flesh. Under great pressure, Aries steps into their most fated moments. These are the crucibles where time bends, where one action ripples across lifetimes. Aries feels this calling, not as thought, but as an ache in the bones, a tightening in the chest, a magnetic pull toward the path others dare not tread. When all doors close and all eyes turn away, Aries walks forward into the unknown. Not for glory, but because their soul demands it. Astrologically, Aries is not simply ruled by Mars. It is informed by the first house of the chart, the house of identity, of emergence, of incarnation itself. Under pressure, Aries is asked again and again to define who they are, not by words but by action. In moments when others pause to seek reassurance, Aries acts to affirm their truth through movement. Their existence teaches that identity is not something found, but something forged, especially in fire. The more intense the heat, the clearer the shape of the soul. Within this fire lives not just ambition, but devotion. Aries is deeply devotional to causes, to ideals, to the people and purposes they love. When they are under pressure in relationships, in families, in communities, they do not abandon easily. Instead, they rise as protectors, defenders, champions of those who cannot yet defend themselves. Their love is not always soft, but it is absolute. They will carry burdens that others shrink from, and though they may complain, though their tempers may flash, they remain present in the fight. Aries does not abandon the ones they love. They simply require the freedom to love on their own terms, through action, not pretense. There is also a visionary element to Aries that emerges only under pressure. In quieter times, their thoughts may scatter like sparks, but when intensity tightens its grip, Aries sharpens. Their perception crystallizes into swift, daring clarity. They see paths where none appear, solutions in impossibility, opportunity hidden in destruction. Their gift is not just motion, it is the capacity to reimagine the landscape as they move across it. They are not just reacting to pressure, they are bending reality with their will, reshaping possibility through sheer determination. In spiritual terms, Aries is the incarnated force of divine fire. Not the fire of consumption, but the fire of purification. They burn through what is false to make way for what is real. When society becomes stagnant, when institutions calcify, when relationships fall into cycles of fear and control, Aries enters like lightning. Their pressure points become sacred pressure valves for entire systems. They do not destroy for the sake of chaos. They destroy what no longer serves the truth. In this way, Aries is a holy disruptor, chosen by the stars to remind the world that change is not only inevitable, it is necessary. Aries also embodies the sacred paradox of initiation and surrender. While they are known for forging ahead, the highest octave of their evolution involves learning when to yield, not from weakness but from wisdom. Under the heaviest of pressures, when no action seems possible, Aries begins to understand the power of trust. Not in others necessarily, but in the process itself. They learn to trust that sometimes the fire must go inward before it bursts forth again. That silence is not defeat, but gathering. That retreat is not surrender, but refinement. And in these moments, Aries begins to integrate the wisdom of their opposite sign. Libra, the balance, the grace, the understanding that force, when refined, becomes elegance. In the most epic and exalted version of their journey, Aries becomes not just the warrior, but the sacred servant of divine purpose. They use their fire to light torches for others, to stand where no one else will, to move when the world freezes. They become embodiments of living will, animated by truth, ignited by love, unstoppable in pursuit of what is right. Under pressure, they are not consumed. They are transformed. They rise from the ashes of their own exhaustion with a clearer purpose, a stronger will, and a soul that remembers that even stars are born from collapse. This is Aries at their most powerful. Not simply surviving pressure, but transmuting it. Not escaping challenge, but embracing it as the rite of passage into their fullest, fiercest light. They are the storm that brings spring, the fire that brings new life, the voice that breaks silence, and the breath that begins everything. And when they rise, wounded, wild, and awake, they carry with them the eternal truth that courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it rule. Aries is that refusal made flesh. Aries is that fire made holy. Aries is that moment when the world remembers it was born to move.